name is Murat Fujim. I am a heart failure cardiologist at Duke in North Carolina, but I also serve in the AHA, actually in the past role of the chair of the career committee, and then more recently in the Innovation Council, the Health Tech Advisory Group. And I think that's where my role comes together here to introduce two distinguished guests that are actually our industry partners that partnering with the AHA around the topic of innovation, and they will introduce their respective companies, their products, and really what this is meant to be a webinar, which will be recorded, can be played back later and shared with friends and colleagues, is that we want to grow the community of innovators and give the space for the AHA members, that's all of you on the call, and give you guys access to the companies that are collaborating with the AHA. And now the AHA has thousands of members. Not everybody of them will be here or will be even listening to this, but this is to some degree intended to promote the rich background of companies we're working with, that we are giving access to our community. But we want to make sure that this is bi-directional. They give us access to what they have to offer, but we also, as a cardiovascular community across various different parts of cardiovascular medicine, give them also the access to work with us, give access to our patients, to our data, and find common grounds for collaboration. So I'll start off with Michelle Graham. If you could maybe introduce yourself, tell us what you and your company are doing and what you are hoping to get out of your work with the AHA.
Sure. Thank you so much. And good to see everybody here today. Thank you for joining. Really excited about our collaboration with the American Heart Association and through the CHTI in particular. Michelle Graham, I'm the president of Intel at Amplity. And we are at our core a contract commercial and medical sales organization with a full service medical communications agency learning team. And then our Intel team, which I lead within the organization. And within our Intel team, which is what we were really excited about collaborating with AHA around, we have an AI powered platform and database, which has medical transcription records within it. And so it allows us to get into the room essentially with patients and physicians to understand the rationale behind their treatment decisions. And so ways in which we leverage this and what we were excited about partnering with many of you on and with AHA on is really to advance research and care in the cardiovascular and cerebrovascular space. How can we get within those insights that we have through those medical transcription records, delve within them and better understand why certain therapies are being used or not used, why certain therapy advances are struggling to get to where you want them to. Where to identify patients for clinical trials, for example, because we've got insights into the HCPs that are treating those particular patients. Everything within our database is HIPAA compliant, so we're able to get at information through NPI numbers of the healthcare professionals that are treating those patients, but we're able to get the insights out of the database, which are really important using AI. So mining all of those records, which it used to take weeks, right? And doing research and trying to go through them. Now we can get in minutes essentially. And so we're really excited to see how we can work with many of you who are on this call today to see how we can help advance the space of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular health.
And so tell me, I'll just have some burning questions here. Do you usually go straight by having access to EMR? Is that a prerequisite for you to be active and working or not?
It is not. We actually work directly with transcription companies themselves. We do have some EHR data that we've begun to bring into our database as well to help round that story out and any of the unstructured notes that come with that. But we've really worked holistically over the last 18 years in that unstructured data space and bringing those insights to life through our connections with the transcription companies who work with the likes of the Epics and the other healthcare systems of the US. And our data is all US only. So I want to make
Okay.
sure that that's clear as well.
Okay. All right. Then George Hurston, make an
Thank you,
introduction,
Marit,
please.
and thanks for the invitation to speak today with you guys. So I'm from Brainomix. I'm the Chief Medical Officer and Lead Innovation at Brainomix. I'm also a stroke physician in the UK by background. And Brainomix is an AI imaging software company, and we focus really on two conditions, stroke and fibrosing lung disease. We span out of Oxford in 2010, and we've developed and deployed our software really across Europe and the rest of the world, and market leaders outside the US. But recently, we've really want to replicate some of the successes we've seen in the rest of the world in the US, and we're really excited to be launching our technology both in stroke and lung disease in the US at the moment. And our technology is really unique in as much as it's focused on simple imaging. When I say simple imaging, I'm talking about non-contrast CT scans, CT angiography, the easy to acquire but hard to interpret scans that are central to decision making and identifying patients for treatment in stroke. And the reason we really focus on this is that there's a massive unmet need in stroke care. Patients across the world miss out on treatment. And one of the reasons they miss out on treatment is a lack of expertise. 80% of stroke patients go to a non-specialist hospital, their closest hospital. And so they don't get robustly identified and targeted for treatment as they might do at a specialist centre. But even at specialist centres, stroke care can be suboptimal. And so we use our technology to pull out insights from the imaging to better understand what's happening to the patients and to target treatments, predominantly reperfusion therapies, but we also work in clinical trials for new treatments to ensure that more patients have better outcomes. We're not really a radiology company in terms of, I'm not interested in making radiologists more efficient in terms of their reporting, but what we're all about is improving access to care. And I think for us, that's really been resonated in our conversations with the AHA is that mission to improve access to care in all hospitals. It's not just about specialist centres. It's not just about, academic centres. Actually, it's about if you want to raise the bar in terms of patient outcomes, you have to address all healthcare systems. And that's really where our vision is. And we're very excited to be partnering with the AHA and looking forward to meeting more partners through initiatives such as this AHA membership in order to find those early adopters, those innovators who can take our technology and we can partner with them to try and have the same impact on patient outcomes in the US as we've seen in Europe and the rest of the world.
So let me ask you, is your service FDA approved?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a suite of different biomarkers. All of them are FDA cleared, yeah.
And give me a concrete example, just to make it illustrate. I'm not in the stroke care per se. Give me an example how you bring some of your technology to bedside and help make decisions.
Yeah, so I was on for stroke this weekend in Oxford, and we have five hospitals that refer into us, and about 80% of the patients in the region go to one of these hospitals before they come to us. And the patient, so a patient came in, I think on Saturday night. They were seen by an ED physician, so a non-specialist doctor. Within about a minute of the patient having their scan, they had an alert on their phone highlighting a large vessel occlusion. And it said, this patient has a large vessel occlusion. It also showed that there was an absence of extensive injury on the brain scan. So the perfect storm of a vulnerable brain that's not yet injured, completely injured, and a target that you can do something about. So this doctor then has the confidence, without their sort of specialist imaging expertise, to pick up the phone and call me and say, I've got this patient, and we can arrange for a time-critical transfer to thrombectomy, which is the definitive treatment for that type of stroke. But similarly, for patients with sort of smaller strokes, more modest strokes, they also benefit from the opportunity to receive thrombolysis. So without those smaller vessel occlusions, we also know that improves patient outcomes. And using the same sort of technology by supporting less specialist doctors, you can make more consistent, more reliable, more sensitive determinations about treatment.
Okay, and then so your software allows to sort of bypass some of the human decision making. That's essentially what you're saying, the diagnostic and the
Absolutely.
connection workflow.
Absolutely. So in the old ways of doing things in the hospital, a patient would come in, they'd have an assessment, and then hopefully they'd have the appropriate scan straight away. You then wait for a radiologist to look at the scans. They then have to provide a report. This is often particularly out of hours. This will be a non-specialist radiologist, a body radiologist, whatever. So aside from the accuracy, there's then a delay. And then if the patient's appropriately identified, then that has to be communicated back to the physicians, who then has to communicate with another hospital in order to arrange a transfer. With the way our system works, I can see, as well as getting the alerts, I can see in real time the stroke patient imaging in the peripheral hospitals within about a minute of the scan being done. I can see it on my phone. There's the AI powered algorithms which are highlighting the targets of treatment. And so you can not only identify more patients for treatment, you can identify patients quicker. And that's absolutely critical in stroke. In stroke, every minute that goes by, you lose 2 million neurons for these large vessel occlusion strokes on average. And that has material impacts on patient outcomes.
Okay. Well, first of all, to the audience, please anytime come off of video, on video, and ask questions, raise your hands. Don't have to be on video to ask questions. Can also put in the chat. Otherwise, I'll be firing off questions as we go. So I'll go back to Michelle and ask, and happy, George can answer as well. Is that why approach a professional society such as AHA to seek for partnership? What's the limitation you have encountered by going around your business and hitting up hospital systems, individual key opinion leaders, or whatever it is? What is it that's so attractive about the AHA and us here in this room?
Yeah,
Or
the
not attractive? Maybe you're already disillusioned by us. Who knows?
no, the opportunity to collaborate with the AHA is I think a really important one. The reach and the level of individuals who do collaborate broadens our network so significantly. It doesn't mean that we don't go and try and collaborate directly with the healthcare systems themselves, right? But what I would
Mm-hmm.
say is there are a lot of roadblocks for companies and private organizations to collaborate directly with the systems themselves because they believe they've got it figured out to some extent. They've got the network within their own systems to do some of the things that we can do. And so there's challenges sometimes in getting to the right individuals to really make the advances. So having the opportunity within AHA to collaborate with the broad network, right, of those who are doing research today, trying to make advances in cardiovascular, supravascular space, who are coming to the AHA because of the reputation and the reach that they have, right, and the diversity of the reach that they have across the networks, not just with healthcare systems, but with other organizations, companies, and local nonprofits, et cetera, really broadens the scope for us and being able to reach some of our ambitious goals as well as an organization to help advance healthcare as efficiently and effectively as possible. And so to us, it's a win-win in being able to do that. And as I said, I think the barriers are taken down a bit and being able to even today get on this webinar, right, and have access to some clinicians who are out there right now trying to do work in this important space.
George,
Yeah,
unless you weigh in, I have a comment
yeah,
and a question.
I'm very happy to weigh in. I'd like to echo, I think, the word reach. I think, the opportunity to reach more physicians, frontline physicians for us is really important. If we want to have a material impact, we've got to be able to scale. We've got to be able to touch as many patients as possible with our technology. For us, partnership is actually is central to what we do. Our technology will make no difference to any patients unless it's used, unless it's adopted, unless it's exploited. The value is extracted and exploited in order to have that impact. So that partnership, both with the AHA and its members, and their shared vision, from what we've learned so far about enabling access to care, improving patient outcomes, very much a patient-centered focus is critical. We really rely on clinical champions who have a vision for the way that care can be delivered in order to drive adoption of our technology. And without that clinical leadership, then our technology just doesn't get adopted. You can't put it in, the administrators can put it in if they want, they can pay for it, that's fine. But actually, you don't get the impact unless you have the clinical championship in order to get the clinical adoption and improve outcomes.
So this brings it exactly to the point. First of all, the comment that I want to make up front is I feel like these days we see very little products introduced where AI is not mentioned as a component of development delivery, which is interesting. It's also daunting. I just had to talk to the fellowship of a different institution, and somebody asked, how should we prepare ourselves for this AI world as cardiovascular trainees? And it's interesting. It's all new, and it seems like we don't seem to be able to keep up with. That's just a comment. But the question is actually what you just mentioned, George, is that there's this interesting situation where we get inundated as a healthcare system and providers by solutions, many, many solutions. Some of them are very duplicative. And the healthcare systems, because these are sort of system-wide decisions, like you can have Jardiance and Farxiga on the shelf, but I'm not sure you can have Brainomix and Brainomix version 2 and version 3 on the shelf, at least not right now. We seem to have only one scribe solution. We seem to have only one imaging solution for CT scanners we operate. And the question becomes that often when they enter on the ground level, it seems to be daunting that, while I'm a champion, I completely agree you need champions. How do I work my way up? I think you have a lot of ground level champions here at the minimum. Or do you go straight to leadership because you knew the vice president of some healthcare system, but there will be no adoption because they have no interest in the solution, might be the wrong solution. So any thoughts and considerations now that you take the business aspect of it? How do companies see that continuous struggle of what's the right entry point?
You're right, it's a challenge, and in my experience, it's always first clinically championed, because administrators do listen to clinicians. It may not seem like it always, but actually I think there is if the physicians say they want something, then that's very powerful. But you're right, you have to get everyone on board, and it's not just one flavor of clinician either. You have to map all stakeholders to make sure for us that we've got straight physicians, radiology, neurosurgery, cardiology. Perhaps we have to be able to speak to all of those stakeholders to get a sort of a unified decision to say, actually, yeah, this is the way we're going to go forward. It's a lot of work, but we're happy to do it. With that's the only way it's going to work. So engagement is critical, both before we get adopted in order to drive adoption, but then just as importantly afterwards, in order to realize the value that the technology has, we have to maintain that engagement. We keep those relationships going. We enable sort of shared learning, peer-to-peer learning, so that people really make the most out of the technology that we're providing for them.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. I think it is critical to kind of, you've got to work it top down and bottom up within the institutions, right? You've got to get both working from that perspective, and you've got to get at the return on investment as well, right? You've got to understand, what value is the organization and the clinicians themselves are going to get out of it. And I always say, as well as you think about those fellows and those that are coming up around you as well, we always talk about something maybe AI powered, but there's still human intelligence that has to come in. And so AI isn't to the point where it can just replace any individual or any major decisions that are taking place. It can help inform, right? And it can do things at speed and at scale, but you still need human intelligence to go with that AI, right? And the insights that come from it, and really need to be able to validate, right? And to me, it's about the economies of scale that you can get out of it, the speed to insights that you can start to get from it. And but it doesn't replace the human aspect. And it's how that's positioned, I think, in especially some of the healthcare spaces. And when you talk about it in that way, I think that helps get some of the buy-in as you start to kind of work those both sides of the system, and being able to really show how it could help accelerate whatever goals it is the institution is trying to accomplish.
Yep. No, I agree. I don't know that any single approach is the best way. It's, to be honest, probably tackle it from as many directions as possible. But then it can become quite daunting to recognize who are the key stakeholders of the institution. And same thing, by the way, of course, goes to maybe to the listeners on this call that might be interested in your technology specifically or in your space. What would be one way to get involved with you all, specifically with this project or with this landscape in general? Maybe George starts. Like, if the listener wants to get involved, how do you get involved with you all?
Well, by all means, come and talk to us. I'll put our contact details in the chat shortly. We really very open to all types of partnership with clinicians. We have probably to a fault, a very academic heritage. We're very keen to generate evidence. I think that's probably been the key to some of our successes. And that can be all the way from sort of very much sort of technical basic imaging science, all the way up through to sort of clinical impact, health economic, quality improvement type activity, which really drives the value of what we do. So, if people are interested in what we're doing, if they're interested in the unmet need we're trying to address and working to improve it in their institutions, then by all means reach out. We really want to collaborate. We want to partner. It's a great time in the US for us to work with physicians. I've got a bit of a carte blanche to sort of grow our partnerships and really work together to measure
So
and
why you say
demonstrate the
that?
impact.
Why
Sorry?
is it now a great time?
Oh, just from a personal, so we have a lot of collaborations all around the world, but actually our focus is in the US. The US is
I
a
got
new
you.
area for us, and so me and my team, we're dedicating a lot of resources to growing our partnerships in the US. We've got a lot of opportunities to validate algorithms, to demonstrate impact in healthcare systems, and we're really excited by the opportunity of identifying partners to do that with.
And then do you, another way of engagement, do you guys hand out product samples,
Yeah.
data access, like grants? Give me some ideas of, actual things, monetary things that might be involved in this, or
Yeah, so
data things.
in order to generate sort of evidence of impact, we provide a lot of contributions to collaborations, whether that is access to the product in an institution for a period of time for the purpose of evaluation. We provide a lot of imaging science expertise. We have really a machine when it comes to generating academic output at the moment that a lot of physicians really value. So we do a lot of multi-center studies. We've got a few in the US going on at the moment, which people can become a part of in order to become part of a sort of large multi-center studies. And then, and if resources are needed to drive the research, then absolutely very willing to consider that, in terms of making sure that we can enable people to do the research that's in both of our interests. And I appreciate that in the US that funding is particularly challenging at the moment. And so hopefully if there's something that we both want to do, then and there's a
Hmm.
case for us to do it, then we're very happy to invest our resources in showcasing the value of our technology.
Okay. Now to you, Michelle, ways to get engaged with you. Besides, I see in the chat, John from the AHA just posted your QR code, your business card, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. So please do. You can use the QR code to reach out to me directly. We would love to contemplate different opportunities that we could work and collaborate together. As I said, being able to collaborate with researchers and clinicians is really important to us. Looking at ways that we can help advance studies that you may be involved with by leveraging the transcription data that we have and how it can enhance the data that you have access to today to really understand the why of treatment behaviors and decisions. For those that are working in the clinical trial space, being able to collaborate with you to help identify potential opportunities where patients may be, who could potentially be opportunities for those trials, and working with institutions to really optimize clinical care of patients. We do real world studies today. We do HEOR studies for organizations. So any way that we can get involved in research with you, that would be fantastic. We're always looking for those different opportunities in those different spaces. And then we also work extensively with manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies themselves, and
Mhm.
corporate stakeholders as well. So if you're looking for opportunities to marry those as well with some of the work that you're doing, we have access to those organizations as well. So there's potential opportunities to partner there.
So you mentioned transcription companies. Can you give examples of those transcription companies that seem to be at the core of your capabilities or data sources, right? What are some
Sure. So
examples?
yeah, so it's medical transcription companies that we partner with. So uh, different practices use different transcription companies to basically gather the information. Some of you may be using um AI to capture those today. So as that technology may be being used, that then goes to, so you may ask the patient permission, as you all know, before they come in to record.
Yeah, so like a bridge or
Yes.
Dragon for direct
Flag
recording.
in some company, depending on who uses what, that then goes to the transcription company to clean, and then goes back to the physician to approve, obviously, as you all know. We then work with the transcription company, and it then comes through a layer, HIPAA compliance layer to us. So we're actually not working with the physicians or the healthcare systems directly. It's through those
Hmm.
companies. So we have access to those insights. And again, it's across the US. It's a representative sample across the US. We have millions of cardiovascular, cerebrovascular transcription records at our disposal that we're able to mine for important insights.
Interesting. And then also on a patient, on the site level, not just nationally for insights, but also on the interesting,
Correct. And we have
interesting.
community and academic setting
Yeah.
insights as well, which could be really important to certain research and understanding barriers to access to different treatments as well, or what's community doctors or cardiologists might be struggling with to get adopted in, or I'm sorry, opposite way around, what academic settings might be struggling with community physicians to adopt. And we can look at those differences in care and treatment between those settings as well.
So I see already George is answering one of the questions that came into the chat around the role of non-invasive point of care biomarkers, I guess around, I mean, it's a very broad question. Are there going to be roles for point of care non-invasive diagnostics at bedside to
Yeah.
detect patients at risk for stroke? Yeah, give us some thoughts around this.
Yeah, I think to make a treatment decision for stroke, the bar has to be very high. You have to be very confident about the diagnosis, particularly the difference between a hemorrhagic and ischemic stroke. And the only way to see that at the moment is with imaging. And I think for an in the field test, I suspect that would be prohibitive, that requirement to do it in the field. And we do see mobile stroke units, CT scanners in ambulances, which are changing the way that stroke care is managed. But I think other sort of point of care testing is probably going to be more useful at first, at least, for triage decisions about directing patients to which hospital, which facility where they might get the right care. The next question from the same participant, I think, is really interesting about multimodal data in algorithms, and I think that's definitely going to be the next sort of generation, if you like, of AI algorithms. I think imaging in, imaging out is pretty standard now. There's a clear regulatory framework that we can take scans, we can do stuff to the scans, get information, we benchmark it against imaging outputs, whether that's a score, a radiology score, or a presence or absence of a disease. I think the multimodal data with clinical and imaging and whatever other physiological, for example, data coming in, I think there's not a clear, to me at least, there's not a clear framework for regulatory clearance. And particularly if you're going to benchmark against clinical outcomes. So if you're going to validate against clinical outcomes, then that's a really big lift. And I think the regulators, in parallel with the developers of these new technologies, are going to have to work closely together to understand how we can clear this sort of technology. I think the algorithms, the compute's pretty much here. I think, these new foundation models are really powerful. I think realizing in clinical practice with all the safeguards that are required is a big step, and I don't have certainty about how it's going to be done.
Let me ask you in a different way. Is there a future where you don't need a CT scan or an MRI of the head to make a diagnosis of a stroke and direct treatment? Will it be based on a
I mean,
non-invasive
yeah, I'd never say
strategy that
never.
is non-imaging? Yeah.
Never say never, but I don't see it in the foreseeable future. Just because you have to be so sure about. I mean, giving thrombolytics to a patient who's had a hemorrhage is so catastrophic. You've got to be
Yeah.
absolutely certain. I suspect what's more likely to happen is that imaging technology will develop at such a rate that it becomes more and more accessible, whether that's in the back of an ambulance or a helicopter or whatever. Actually,
Right.
if it's cheap and cheerful to do a scan, why not just do the scan? If
Yep.
it gives you the absolute concrete answer of if there's blood or not.
Yep. Because that's where the cardiovascular coronary space is evolving to, heart failure space is evolving to, where we couldn't make the echo point of care, or we just run the ECG and say you have heart failure, right? Which could direct treatment, or just direct you
Yeah.
to do the actual echo at some
We're
point.
we're very jealous of the ECG, the EKG in stroke medicine. I mean, to be able to have something like that in stroke would be fantastic, but sadly we don't.
Yeah, the EEG is not that simple, huh?
No.
And Michelle, any question or anything can deduce from your side around this? Maybe let me rephrase this around data. I was talking today a lot about data being really, sort of at the core of everything. There's this big call by ARPA-H that you maybe are familiar with, the advocate grant that's going around to creating agentic AI solutions for the management of heart failure. And really solutions that are going to be amongst the winners will be solutions that have data access and are listening to patient conversations all day, every day. So how do you see this field evolving where more and more of our interaction with patients are getting captured and we're trying robots, quote unquote, to simulate us and take over some of our mundane work, such as GDMT titration? Do you see that your company could participate in something like that?
I think we definitely could participate in the capture of that, right? Once that data is captured, right, and being able to then mine that very quickly because our platform is trained for over 20 years on medical records and how to quickly pull insights from those records, where any new technology today has to learn those types of records and how to draw insights from it. And George, I'm sure you're very aware of that, right? So any of the new technology, while it will happen faster as time goes on and gets smarter, I think where we can play a great space is that our systems are already trained on that. And so the insights we can pull and mine very quickly from EMR systems versus transcription systems, et cetera, they all marry very quickly, and we can get insights, as I said, that then humans can come in and make better informed decisions based on in a faster turnaround time. I don't think the robots are going to come in and replace anybody anytime soon. I think that human element, as I said from top, right, it's always going to be there, but it's how do we help get you as a physician the insights that you need faster and provide you with as much information, and cut that speed to decision making, right, and speed to treatment down, right? So it's that you're having the information at your hands much faster. And that's where
Yeah.
technologies like what we have will come into play to help with that because it already knows how to look at all of that in a very quick way. So the more we can gather those types of transcriptions and gather information from those patient-physician conversations, it helps you not only understand kind of the archetypes of the HCPs and how they prescribe and treat, but also the patients and their sentiments as well. And I think sometimes we forget that there's a two-way street in those, right? A patient can decline treatment that you may think is the best thing for them. So we can get underneath that as well and where some of those
Mm,
disparities might be.
love it. I just realized we are already over time. That's what happens when nobody is putting the reins on me. But first of all, to summarize this, what you essentially said is, Michelle, that data is king, but really interpreting and acting on the data is really what matters. It's true also in the remote monitoring space and heart failure. I would like to thank both of you. I really hope the audience and the ones that will listen to this as will go on the AHA website will follow up with you all. And please don't be shy to reach out to the AHA base, and hopefully we will provide you opportunity to connect with the AHA base, and the AHA base does reach out to you all. You would be surprised that it's not just the people on the ground level. You have all walks of life amongst the AHA membership. From the PhD scientist pipetting all the way to the CEO. So good of luck. You have a good day. Thanks for taking the time for this recording.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.